Power rarely enters through the front door. It doesn't shout, it doesn't demand, it studies, it learns your rhythm. It watches what you fear to lose, and it walks through that opening. The powerful have always understood that dominance isn't maintained through force, it's engineered through consent. Because the greatest form of control is not when someone obeys out of fear, it's when they believe obedience was their own idea. That is the architecture of dominance, a structure so subtle, so psychological, that it doesn't need walls or weapons. It builds itself in habits, in language, in expectation. And by the time you realize you're inside it, you've already built part of it yourself. The powerless think power is loud. They imagine dominance as cruelty, hierarchy, aggression. But those are symptoms, not structure. True power doesn't force. It frames. It arranges reality so elegantly that rebellion feels irrational. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He wrote that the prince must never rely on violence alone, because fear decays. What endures is belief. Belief in the order he creates, belief in the inevitability of his rule. So he designed power as illusion, a theater of strength built upon the psychology of weakness. Every empire, every company, every relationship that endures does so not through domination, but through design. Design that makes submission feel safe. Design that makes obedience feel moral. Design that turns the burden of freedom into the comfort of certainty. The strong don't demand loyalty, they offer protection. They understand that people fear uncertainty more than they hate control. So they craft stability, routine, hierarchy, and call it safety. The subjects call it loyalty. The rulers call it architecture. Power engineers perception long before it commands behavior. It whispers in the smallest of ways, through tone, through posture, through what it refuses to explain. Dominance is a silent grammar. It's not what is said, but what is assumed. And the powerful speak in assumptions, never in pleas. Watch how they enter a room. They do not demand attention. The room gives it. Their silence feels heavier than others' words. Their stillness draws focus. Because power radiates from contrast, from doing less in a world addicted to excess. Dominance, at its core, is not an act, it's a calibration. The powerful calibrate emotion the way an artist calibrates light. They know that anger can be useful, but unpredictability cannot. They know that confidence, when measured, becomes command. And they know that distance is not coldness, it's insulation. The weak reveal too much, their needs, their hopes, their urgency. The strong reveal almost nothing. They understand that mystery is not a barrier, it's leverage. Every unanswered question becomes a gravity well. Every pause becomes pressure. Machiavelli once said, "Men judge more by the eye than by the hand." He meant that the illusion of dominance matters more than the mechanics behind it. That's why the most powerful are often the least visible. Their influence flows through perception, not performance. The architecture of dominance is invisible because it's emotional. It operates through fear, validation, and comfort. The ruler doesn't need to threaten his subjects. He needs only to make them afraid of losing his approval. And so dominance begins with emotional monopoly, when one mind quietly occupies another. When your sense of safety, value, or belonging depends on someone else's reaction. That's not love. That's leverage. The powerful cultivate dependency the way farmers cultivate soil. They give enough warmth to make others bloom, and withhold just enough to make them chase the light. That rhythm of giving and withholding is the heartbeat of every dominant system on earth. You see it in politics, in corporations, in relationships. The illusion of choice hides a pattern of conditioning. The employee who fears disappointing their boss more than losing their job. The citizen who mistakes surveillance for protection. The follower who trades freedom for guidance. All of them live inside the same architecture, a cathedral built from invisible walls. Walls of comfort, walls of meaning, walls they never question because questioning feels like betrayal. But the Machiavellian mind sees differently. He studies these walls not with resentment, but with fascination. He understands that power isn't personal, it's structural. And the moment you see the structure, you stop playing the emotional game. You realize that dominance doesn't require cruelty, it requires composition. The powerful arrange reality like a symphony, a balance, a rhythm, silence, and restraint. They know when to withdraw to create demand, when to appear generous to create guilt, when to show weakness to inspire trust. Because in the architecture of dominance, even vulnerability is a strategic design, and that's where the weak lose. They think power is freedom from emotion, but the powerful understand that emotion is the raw material of power. They don't suppress it, they sculpt it. The architecture of dominance isn't a fortress built on fear, it's a labyrinth built on understanding. Those who rule, rule not by strength, but by comprehension. They know how the world reacts, so they never need to fight it. That is the first secret of dominance. The strongest are not those who resist the current, but those who quietly design the river. The powerful don't always appear strong. In fact, they rarely do. They've learned that the sharpest blade isn't the one that cuts, but the one that bends, because domination that's visible invites resistance, but submission that's intentional disarms it. That's the paradox of control, to appear harmless while holding the power to destroy. Machiavelli understood this deeply. He warned princes not to seem cruel when mercy would serve better. He advised humility when arrogance would provoke rebellion. He knew that power must never announce itself. It must be felt, not seen. And so the art of submission was born, a performance so precise that even the conqueror believes its compassion. True power conceals itself beneath grace. It lets the opponent breathe, not out of kindness but calculation. Because when people feel unthreatened, they reveal themselves. They speak more, they relax, they expose their fears, and the one who listens in silence collects their leverage. Indeed. War generals use feigned retreat to lure armies into ambush. In business, leaders let competitors grow overconfident, then strike when arrogance blinds them. In relationships, the powerful lower their tone, soften their words, and win battles before the other person even realizes a war has begun. Submission, in its purest form, is camouflage. It's how the lion hides inside the grass until the wind moves right. It's how influence disguises itself as humility, but the weak mistake performance for identity. They think that being gentle is virtue, not strategy. They think surrender is moral, not tactical. And so they submit genuinely, while the powerful submit strategically. The difference is awareness. The powerful never kneel without purpose. Every bow has an angle, every silence a shadow of intent. This is how Machiavellian submission works. It gives others the illusion of dominance, so they stop defending it. It allows them to feel control while they slowly become dependent on your compliance. Because once someone believes you accept their authority, they lower their guard. And when guards are lowered, control transfers quietly. That's the true exchange. Not in confrontation, but in calibration. A wise strategist uses defeat the way an artist uses contrast. He lets himself lose small to win large. He lets others think they've gained advantage, only to find later they've been positioned perfectly. Like pawns on a prearranged board, the strong lose strategically. The weak lose emotionally. The powerful understand that surrender buys time, and time rearranges everything. They know that silence after humiliation speaks louder than pride, that retreat in the right moment becomes prophecy fulfilled. Machiavelli once wrote, "It is better to appear merciful than to be merciful." He wasn't celebrating deceit. He was describing geometry, the mathematics of perception. People respond not to your truth, but to the image of your truth. So design the image carefully. Let them believe they've won. Let them feel magnanimous, generous, righteous, while you remain in control of the outcome. That's how submission becomes a stage and weakness becomes weaponized grace. The art of submission also demands rhythm, knowing when to yield and when to resume pressure. Dominance is never static. It breathes, pauses, recoils, and advances. Every concession is a calculated investment in future control. Look at how nature rules. The tide withdraws not because it's defeated, but because it's gathering force. The serpent coils not from fear, but to strike deeper. The oak bends in the storm, and for that reason alone it survives. The powerful live by the same rhythm. They let emotion pass through them, but never act from it. They let anger disguise itself as silence. They let empathy masquerade as vulnerability. and every reaction they inspire becomes a thread in their design. Submission also works because it triggers trust. The human mind is disarmed by humility. We trust those who seem unthreatening. We open ourselves to those who seem fragile, and in doing so, we hand over our emotional architecture to them. This is how manipulators operate without appearing malicious. They play the victim. They mirror insecurity. They build intimacy around weakness. And before long, their dependency becomes your responsibility. They own you by needing you. It's the inversion of power, control through helplessness. It's why the meek often influence more than the mighty, because they've learned that the appearance of weakness is the perfect disguise for strategic will. Machiavelli would never condemn this. He would simply call it efficiency. The world rewards outcomes, not purity, and submission, used well, delivers both control and absolution. He would tell you, if you must kneel, make sure the floor belongs to you. In every arena, from politics to business to love, the masters of dominance wield humility like a sword sheathed in silk. They absorb blame to diffuse rebellion. They apologize to maintain authority. They let others win arguments to preserve control. Because real power doesn't need to be right. It needs to remain relevant. The weak see submission as the end of choice. The powerful see it as the creation of new options. Every concession is a seed. Every pause is a preparation. Every act of humility is a way to redirect the flow of energy. The art of submission isn't cowardice. It's choreography. It's the dance of appearance and intent. It's the act of bowing so deeply that your opponent never sees the knife. You draw on the way up. And once you learn to master that rhythm, you stop being reactive, you stop defending, you start directing. That's the second pillar of dominance, the ability to lose on purpose, because the real victory isn't in the moment, it's in the memory. Fear is the oldest form of governance. Long before law, before religion, before gold, there was fear. It is the first chain forged by human consciousness, and it remains the most efficient. The powerful know this. They understand that you don't need to cage a man who cages himself. You don't need to silence him if he fears being wrong. You don't need to control him if he's already paralyzed by what might happen. That is the mirror of fear, a reflection that shows you not the world as it is, but the world as you dread it might be. And whoever controls that reflection controls your behavior. Machiavelli wrote that it is safer to be feared than loved, but only if that fear is calculated. He didn't mean terror, he meant anticipation. The art of keeping people uncertain enough to remain obedient, because absolute safety breeds complacency, but small doses of fear breed focus, dependency, and devotion. The ruler's fear is not thunderous, it's rhythmic. It drips quietly into the psyche until anxiety becomes routine. It shapes thought, limits questions, and defines what feels possible. Soon, you no longer need to be told what to do. You simply act within the invisible perimeter of what you think is allowed. That's the elegance of fear. It automates control. It turns free will into self-surveillance. It replaces rebellion with ritual. Modern systems still use the same formula, only refined. They no longer threaten the body. They threaten relevance. They no longer punish disobedience. They punish invisibility. Lose your position, lose your audience, lose your access, and fear ensures you never question why you wanted them in the first place. The powerful weaponize that instinct masterfully. They understand that fear is a teacher. It teaches focus, it teaches obedience, it teaches silence. But most importantly, it teaches dependency. A fearful mind seeks protection, and protection always comes at the cost of freedom. Watch how empires form. Each begins by offering safety, order, stability, prosperity, and the masses, tired of uncertainty, kneel gratefully. Then comes the subtle shift. Safety becomes expectation, expectation becomes entitlement, and entitlement becomes leash. That leash is never pulled violently. It tightens softly, wrapped in words like policy, loyalty, or responsibility, and the people wear it proudly, calling it virtue. The powerful design fear as experience, not threat. They shape environment to shape behavior. In offices, it's hierarchy. In society, it's reputation. In personal life, it's rejection. The mechanism changes, but the structure remains. Fear keeps the machine precise. And yet, here lies the deeper paradox. The most dominant minds are not immune to fear. They are fluent in it. They don't resist it. They read it. They study how it flows through others and redirect it like an engineer redirects current. To the Machiavellian, fear is not weakness. It's a compass. It shows where belief lives. It reveals what people truly worship, because fear and value are twins. What you fear to lose is what you've unconsciously crowned as God. The powerful identify those gods in others: reputation, love, stability, belonging, and learn to threaten them without ever lifting a hand. That's why influence doesn't require aggression. It only requires awareness. If you know what people fear, you can predict their choices. And if you can predict their choices, you control the outcome. Even when they think it's their own. That's how fear becomes architecture. It's not felt, it's installed. In schools that reward obedience over curiosity, in jobs that trade time for survival, in governments that preach freedom but punish risk, every system whispers the same unspoken message: stay where it's safe. But safety is the cage with the softest walls. The weak mistake comfort for peace. The powerful understand that comfort is sedation. Machiavelli would tell you that fear must be managed, not escaped. That courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the ability to direct it. He'd teach you to use fear as leverage, to make others move without realizing why they moved, because the one who defines danger defines destiny. This is how the powerful use weakness to win. They turn their own fears into empathy, and everyone else's into obedience. They appear cautious, even fragile, so others underestimate them. They mirror vulnerability to earn trust, then use that trust as the stage upon which fear quietly performs. Dominance at its peak feels like comfort. It doesn't scream, it soothes. It wraps you in routine, in order, in the illusion of choice. You don't fight it because it never looks like oppression. It looks like structure. It looks like security. It looks like the life you were told to want. But once you see how fear is designed, you stop obeying it. You start using it. You begin to build differently, not from avoidance, but from awareness. Because to rule yourself, you must first master your fears and then understand theirs. That's the third law of dominance. Fear is not a wall to climb. It's a mirror to read. The weak run from reflection. The powerful rearrange the light. Weakness has always been misunderstood. The masses see it as failure, fragility, flaw. But to the powerful, weakness is currency, soft gold that buys access, trust, and forgiveness, because dominance in its purest form never looks like dominance. It looks like understanding. It looks like patience. It looks like the very thing it is not. The powerful don't reject weakness. They own it. They study its chemistry, its triggers, its rhythms. They learn how vulnerability makes people honest, how pity disarms suspicion, how sympathy opens locked doors that arrogance never could. Machiavelli wrote that a wise ruler must learn how not to be good. He didn't mean cruelty, he meant adaptation. He meant that goodness, like weakness, is a costume, one to be worn, altered, and removed when necessary. The powerful do not fear appearing weak, because they know that weakness, well timed, is simply camouflage for control. Conqueror who bleeds before his men earns loyalty. A leader who admits doubt wins faith. A rival who kneels earns attention. And all three are illusions. Moments crafted not from honesty, but from strategic awareness of emotion. The alchemy of weakness works because humans crave connection more than truth. We want to feel seen, not challenged. We trust those who share their pain. And the Machiavellian uses that craving the way an artist uses light, to draw focus exactly where he wants it. He doesn't hide his flaws, he curates them. He reveals just enough humanity to appear safe, just enough imperfection to feel real, and just enough pain to earn protection. That's the quiet art of dominance through empathy. To be feared is efficient, to be pitied is permanent. The weak expose their wounds to heal, the powerful expose them to harvest. They know that compassion is the most intoxicating form of control because it disguises dependence as virtue. The great manipulators throughout history were not tyrants. They were martyrs. They didn't demand devotion. They inspired it, by appearing misunderstood, by turning their weakness into a mirror for others' suffering. People followed them not because they were strong, but because they made others feel seen in their own fragility. That's how dominance evolves. It doesn't shout, it whispers, "I understand." And when you believe that whisper, you surrender without realizing you've surrendered. To use weakness as power, one must first remove shame from it. The weak fear being seen as fragile, the powerful leverage it. They understand that every emotion, if expressed with intention, becomes influence. Tears can soften negotiations. Doubt can invite guidance. Apology can redirect anger. Vulnerability can disarm intellect. And the moment emotion replaces logic, control shifts quietly. That's why the most dangerous kind of dominance is gentle. It makes you feel loved, not. It makes you believe you're helping, not serving. It makes obedience feel like compassion. Machiavelli would call it the mask of mercy. A leader, he said, must appear compassionate, faithful, humane, not because he is, but because compassion shields power better than cruelty ever could. The illusion of weakness works because it reverses polarity. When the powerful appear small, others lower their defenses. When they apologize, others open up. When they falter publicly, others rally to defend them. Each act of humility creates invisible debt, and debt, whether emotional or moral, is control disguised as gratitude. Look closely at modern power. The philanthropist who cries on stage, the CEO who fails publicly to humanize his brand, the politician who admits error just before an election. These are not confessions. They're performances, alchemy disguised as authenticity, because the performance of weakness creates access to hearts that logic cannot open. And once you're inside the heart, you no longer need the mind's permission. The Machiavellian doesn't reject empathy. He masters it. He mirrors the pain of others until they see themselves in him. And once they do, their loyalty becomes instinctive. That's not manipulation, it's emotional architecture. He would say, the strong build walls to protect themselves. The wise build windows to let others step inside. This is the secret of dominance in an age obsessed with authenticity. The most genuine are often the most engineered. The most open are often the most deliberate. The most relatable are often the most rehearsed. Because power today doesn't come from being feared. It comes from being felt. The weak chase validation. The powerful design it. They craft stories of struggle to make their triumph seem destined. They share vulnerability not to bond, but to bind. They know that every confession creates connection, and every connection can be shaped into control. That's the alchemy of weakness, the transmutation of fragility into force. It's the art of turning pity into power and empathy into empire. The world bows to those who appear honest enough to be trusted, but disciplined enough never to truly be known. And that's why the powerful can weep and still win. Because every tear is strategy, every silence is placement, every apology is performance, and every gesture of weakness is simply dominance, spoken in a softer language. The most powerful empires leave no monuments. Their walls are invisible, their rulers anonymous, their influence ambient. That is the destiny of dominance. It begins as force, it matures into persuasion, and it ends in silence. Because when power becomes perfect, it no longer needs to act. It simply exists. The unseen empire doesn't demand attention, it defines it. Its rulers are not visible, they are embedded. In algorithms, in institutions, in the culture itself, their ideas speak long after their names are forgotten. Their control is not command, it's condition. You can feel it in how you speak, how you dream, how you choose, the words you use, the fears you avoid, all of them designed by someone you'll never meet. Machiavelli would see this world and smile, because his philosophy, the quiet mechanics of power, has become universal. What he once whispered to princes is now encoded in every digital empire, every brand, every ideology. The game he described no longer belongs to rulers. It belongs to systems. The modern prince is not a man, it's a network. It doesn't conquer land, it conquers attention. It doesn't control armies, it controls narratives. It doesn't enforce law, it defines normal. And that is the final evolution of dominance, when control no longer needs to persuade because people persuade each other. When you no longer fight to enforce your ideology because the crowd has made it their morality. When your influence becomes so natural that rebellion feels like heresy. The unseen empire doesn't issue orders. It installs assumptions. It doesn't build obedience. It builds identity. And once you mistake identity for freedom, control becomes self-sustaining. That's how the powerful use weakness to win. They make submission feel sacred. They turn humility into virtue, conformity into pride, and distraction into meaning. The empire of the unseen doesn't care if you believe in it. It only cares that you react to it. Because reaction is energy, and energy sustains power far longer than consent ever could. Every system of control begins the same way, with a story that feels comforting, moral, inevitable, and every time you repeat that story, online, in conversation, even in thought, you reinforce its walls. Brick by brick, word by word, belief by belief. But here's the secret. Machiavelli never wrote. The truth whispered only between the lines. To escape the architecture of power, you must stop performing inside it. You must stop playing the moral theater designed for your obedience. Stop reacting to the illusions crafted for your outrage. Stop mistaking the performance of freedom for the experience of it. Because awareness, not rebellion, is the first act of liberation. Rebellion still dances to the music of the master. Awareness steps outside the sound entirely. The unseen empire thrives because people think they are outside it. They think they are awake. They think understanding the system frees them from it, but the system doesn't fear understanding. It feeds on it. Every explanation strengthens its myth. Every critic spreads its name. Every denial proves its relevance. That's the brilliance of perfect dominance. When even opposition becomes orbit, the only true escape is clarity without reaction. To see the design without needing to destroy it. To move through it as an observer, using its rhythm to your advantage, but never mistaking it for truth. That's when dominance changes shape. It becomes inward. You stop seeking control over others and begin mastering control over perception itself. You realize that the world is not divided between the powerful and the powerless, but between those who build systems and those who live inside them, and the architects of power, the true, unseen, are not those with armies or crowns, but those who design frameworks of belief. They decide what the masses call good, what they call evil, what they call possible. And by shaping meaning, they own reality. The greatest dominance, then, is subtle creation, not of law, but of lens. Because whoever defines how others see the world controls what they can imagine. That's the empire that can never fall, the one that governs interpretation. Machiavelli would not envy kings today. He would envy engineers, marketers, writers, architects of thought who can shift behavior with a sentence, redirect nations with an image, or ignite faith with a sound. The battlefield is no longer physical, it's perceptual, and those who understand that rule not by force but by framing. This is the end of dominance, or rather its perfection. When your power is so diffused through the world that you no longer need to hold it, it moves on its own. It circulates through systems, through beliefs, through the very language people use to describe their lives. You are no longer the ruler, you are the environment. And that's how the powerful truly win, by disappearing into the architecture of the world itself. Because the highest form of control is not when people follow you. It's when they no longer remember a time before your design existed. That's not tyranny, that's eternity. You've seen what most never notice. That power doesn't conquer, it persuades. That control doesn't always command, it comforts. And that weakness, when used with precision, becomes the most elegant form of dominance. Most will turn away now. They'll return to their distractions, their small certainties, their comfortable illusions of fairness. Because to understand how power truly works is to lose the luxury of innocence. But you're still here, which means something in you is awakening. A quiet intelligence that no system can govern. The world wants you reactive. It wants you loud, emotional, predictable. Because the loud can be watched, the emotional can be guided, the predictable can be sold. But power, real power, is stillness. It's awareness without reaction. It's silence that shapes everything around it. So stay here, in this space where strategy replaces noise, where emotion becomes insight, where clarity becomes rebellion. Subscribe, not for content, but for consciousness. Because every week we go deeper into the hidden systems, the subtle manipulations, and the designs that most will never see. You don't need permission to understand the world. You only need patience. And in that patience, you'll discover what the powerful already know, that control isn't about owning others. It's about mastering yourself. Step into the silence. That's where dominance begins.